Hi, everyone. Great to see you. Great to see you. I'm live here and also on YouTube. So, depending on your favorite channel, join me there. Happy to have you here today. I'll just wait for people to join and just pulling up everything so I can see all of your lovely comments. Hi, Abby. Great to see you here. So yes, if we haven't met before, my name is Danae. I help people who are dealing with situations at work. So that could include grievances, disciplinaries, maybe being unfairly dismissed, made redundant, or maybe you're in the employment tribunal process itself and you're trying to figure out, hey, Allegro, good to see you. Maybe you're trying to figure out how to prepare for a preliminary hearing, how to cross-examine, all that kind of stuff I can help you with. And I'm live here, and also, hi YouTube. I've got a few people over on YouTube so far as well. So great to see you all. Very happy to spend some time with you just now and answer as many of your questions. Hey Meredith, good to see you. Answer as many of your questions as I can about like what's been going on in your workplaces and how I can help. Oh, big shout out to the Bella community. I have been gifted some hours. This is so awesome, Allegro. So yeah, often we get people who maybe finish their case early, and instead of refunding, they just ask if they can pay it forward and pay the hours forward, which is so cool. And we do facilitate that. And it looks like some of them went to Allegro. So that's awesome. That's so awesome. So yeah, and you know, I mean, it happens, right? Maybe you buy one of our 6-hour coaching packages or 9-hour coaching packages, and then you settle, which is such an amazing outcome. And it's not like Vala costs the earth. And so then that means that if you're capable of doing it, you can just pay it forward for the next person who is going through the shit, basically. Okay, I've got some questions here, so let me get started. So first, hey, Ibby's World over on YouTube. I had my PH with the help of a Vala coach with my list of issues. Amazing. And now I have a second PH potentially, so sex discrimination can be included. That's awesome. So Libby, what you're talking about, what Ibby is talking about there for a preliminary hearing is the most critical part. And so many people don't know this without legal training or support from someone like us, is you go into this preliminary hearing. That's the first thing that happens after you file your ET1. You get the response back, and then you get this letter from the tribunal that invites you to this preliminary hearing, and they send you this case management agenda, and you think, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do, fill in this case management agenda. And there's this really deceptive question, and it just says, what are the issues? And you're like, oh, I don't know. What are the issues? And it's such a deceptive question because they're looking for a very specific set of legal questions there. And in no way do they tell you that. And so what they're looking for is literally the exact specific legal issues that the tribunal will have to use to decide if you win or lose. So it's like you're setting yourself up for the test that you have to fail or pass when the judge decides. And that's very critical and really important to kind of think through, but nobody tells you that. and so that's a lot of what our preliminary hearing work is to help people with our package to work through that list of issues like we did with Ibby. And oh, wow. And Ibby's just saying on YouTube, the judge said I was switched on with the terminologies, and if I was a lawyer myself, maybe she was impressed by my list of issues that your Vala coach helped me with. Oh, first of all, big love heart to Ibby. That is amazing. And we get a lot of this feedback lately, actually, where the judge says like, wow, you sound like a lawyer. I'm actually working on some new ways of describing Vala to people who don't know about it. And one of them is think like a lawyer, because that's really what we're training all of you to do. We're training you to think like a lawyer so that you can go up against them when you can't afford to get one to do it for you. Okay, awesome. That's so awesome. Right, so let me answer some more questions here. Yeah, great. And so have you ever dealt with the Bradford Factor to track illness and your thought on it? So actually, I've been meaning to do a video about the Bradford Factor because it is So frustrating. So for those of you who don't know, the Bradford Factor is this, I think it started in the States. It's this formula. It's a pretty basic formula of how many sick days somebody can take in a year before reaching this like threshold of too many. And it's not, I don't even think it was designed to be such a blunt instrument, but some bad employers will just use it as a threshold of, if you do this, if you pass the Bradford Factor number, then you're going to be sacked for taking too many sick days. And the thing about the Bradford Factor is, if it is applied completely blanket across an organization, it is almost certainly going to be unlawful. And that's because you can't take a standard sick policy and then just apply that to a disabled person, for example, who might have more sick days as a result of their disability. And you can't, you just can't do it. It's because you have to, as part of making reasonable adjustments, as part of not indirectly discriminating against disabled people, you need to work with that disabled person and try and work with them. So it's not to say that the Bradford Factor itself isn't something that a company might want to measure, but it does mean that if that is the justification for any kind of detriment or mistreatment, it very well could be unlawful. So great. Shanup, let me know if that answers your question. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about it or answer anything specific. Okay, thank you, Only Dans. Right, so Adam, I use the name and address on the payslip and contact on ACAS certificate time frame, but then I found out they have a different name and different name and address. So put that on the new ACAS certificate just outside time frame. ACAS were able to contract the employer with the first certificate. When it came to applying the ET1, I put both. Can my claim be thrown out due to the issue? So Adam, your employer might try and throw it out for this issue, but this is more common than you might think. And so typically you can resolve this with an application to amend. And so IBI is talking about adding a sex discrimination claim to their case, and that would be through the same thing. It would be requesting an amendment. And one of the things, if you look at a preliminary hearing agenda, one of the first questions on that agenda is, do we have the names right of everybody? And so it's very normal for the judge to sit down and say, okay, have we gotten this stuff wrong? Is there anything right? I could see an employer trying to get a strikeout off the back of that, but it would have to be a pretty the judge would have to be pretty strict to not just allow you to amend it, given that ACAS were able to contact them and given that there was a misunderstanding. So I think you should be well within your rights at the PH to ask for an amendment to clarify the specific legal company. Okay, Bear's saying that they believe that the NHS have the Bradford Factor in place. Like I said, it's one thing to have it, it's quite another to use it as a blanket policy. Okay. Let's see. Allegro is singing the praises of the ET1. Okay, Nicole, what are the chances of them coming after me for legal fees after they make me pay to continue the case? So Nicole is asking about, I think, what is called a costs warning letter. So a costs warning letter is something that you get from the other side. You can send one too that says, hi, if you fail, we're going to ask the court to make you pay our legal expenses. Now, what they don't tell you is that you're not really allowed to do that except in exceptional circumstances. So generally, in the employment tribunal, even if you win your case, you do not win the legal costs as part of the compensation. That's different in other courts, but in the employment tribunal, costs are generally not included. And so there are some exceptions, and that's basically where people are taking the piss. So if either side know that they don't have a case, they know that they're just doing it to be vexatious or something like that, then that could open them up to potentially having to pay the costs. Or if they're working through the process and they're missing deadlines all the time, they're not replying, they're taking the piss that way, then that could open them up for a cost request as well. Those are the circumstances, though. And if you want to read those rules to find out where they specifically apply, if you Google Employment Tribunal Rules of Procedure 2013, that is the document that will explain when costs are actually awarded. What those scary letters don't tell you is that with the last stats that we have, it was only in 6% of cases where an employer requested costs that they actually got them. So 6%, less than 10%. And in fact, when an employee requested costs against an employer, it was 26% of cases. So, of course, there is a risk, but there are definitely ways that you can minimize that risk, and it is not a dead cert at all. So, Nicole, I hope that helps you understand just that risk a little bit more. Okay, let me go over to YouTube. Mick, hi, Danae. I've been working with Michelle and Masuma. Those are two of our legal coaches. They have been great. Thank you very much. I can't mention my case due to AO and RRO. If we did a COT 3, do they cease as they would with promulgation in the tribunal? So I don't actually know what AO and RRO are. It sounds like it might be an industry-specific thing. Can somebody fill me in on what AO and RRO are? And we'll go from there. Whilst somebody's filling me in, I'll go to the next question on YouTube. The CEO sexually harassed me. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. They're arguing it's out of time as the last incident was 3 months, 14 days before I filed for tribunal. With so many incidents, is it out of time? Rick, thank you for your question. And I'm so sorry that you're having to deal with that, first of all. There's a few things going on with that. So we did a whole webinar about this, and if you haven't gone and watched the webinar, I would highly recommend it. It is on the webinars page of our website, and it is how to get out of time claims heard. So given that you are so close to the deadline, that is one of the considerations that comes into effect when you are asking the tribunal to make an exception. And you absolutely can ask the tribunal to make an exception. The other things that they are looking for is an understanding as to why it was out of time. So is it because you were engaging internally and you thought that it was going to be resolved, but it wasn't? That can be one of the factors. Did you not know that there was a deadline? And then did you not have access to good legal advice? Did you not have access to a union? Things like that. So we go into the very specifics of exactly how to request an out of time claim in those videos or in that webinar. So I would definitely recommend that you check that out. It's on the webinars page of vala.uk. So hopefully, Rick, that will help you. I definitely think with it being it was because the company fired people a lot for way less than complaining about such things, so I didn't dare. So fear of retaliation, basically. So yeah, I definitely think that there is an argument that you could construct for that. What I would suggest that you do is first, I take it you've already filed your ET1, Rick. Is that correct? And whilst yes, okay, great. So this is probably going to have come up or will come up in a preliminary hearing. Gotcha. And is this a preliminary hearing where you are discussing this exact topic, or is it a case management preliminary hearing, Rick? That makes a difference. So he's answering me over on YouTube. It's a main hearing, not a case management preliminary hearing. Okay, so it sounds like you need to make the argument that you were out of time, or that you were out of time, but you should have an exception. And they are going to be expecting you to come. They're going to be expecting you to come to that hearing with that argument. We can help you with this. This is called a substantive preliminary hearing. That's where it's like a mini hearing, basically. Oh, no, it's a main hearing. No, it's a main hearing that you're going to. Sorry, I misunderstood, Rick. Has the judge said that they're going to be hearing the full merits hearing? Okay, have they said that they're going to be considering the issue as to whether or not it is out of time? Because if so, you'd want to have an argument ready for that. Okay, yes, they are at the start. In that case, two proposals for you, or two recommendations. One, watch the webinar. It costs like 12, 15 pounds, something like that. And two, if you can afford it, use our hearing prep package. We have a final hearing prep package where our coaches will walk you through preparing for that final hearing, making this argument, and generally just getting ready to do this. So that is on the coaching page on our website. Would really highly recommend that. But watch the video first, because that'll give you, I mean, you might not need to do the prep package, but I would if you can afford it, because that's really going to give you so much more information going into that final hearing. And if it's in 7 days, contact us today immediately and say that you've got a last minute final hearing request, and can we try and allocate you as a matter of urgency, and we'll see what we can do. Right. So I've got, you're very welcome, Rick. Very happy to help. Okay, so Ibby, I haven't forgotten you, but I'm just going to quickly pop over to TikTok and answer some more questions there. Let's see. Roseanne, I have an HR interview tomorrow and they want me to advise on a theft case. Any considerations? Roseanne, I don't think I understand the question. Are you the HR person? Why do they want you to advise on a theft case? It seems quite unusual. Right. Holly, I just found out my employer has been creating an invoice on my behalf to be paid. Was told PAYE. That's strange, Holly. So are you saying that they are treating you like a contractor instead of like an employee? Does that mean that they haven't been paying? Have they given you a pay slip? I think that's the next question. Have they given you a pay slip? They have given you a pay slip. Well, then why are they raising an invoice? That's very strange. There's no need for an invoice. Okay. So Roseanne's interviewing for an HR advisor role, and the role play is a theft case. I'm afraid I don't know much about theft, actually, Roseanne. I'm so sorry I can't help you. But well done getting prepared. Nice. I found my pay slips in a Word document. They're making them up. Have you phoned HMRC to see if they're actually paying taxes for you? I think that might be a good next step. This sounds really ropey. Whilst you reply back, I'm going to go back and answer Ibby's question. My disclosures are due in January. What happens if the second PH is after the disclosure stage? Is there any way I can postpone my disclosures until I've had my second PH? How do I go about doing this? Ibby, yes, you will. You should be able to ask for this. You would make an application for postponement. The thing is, yeah, so if they come back and they give you a second preliminary hearing that is going to be after the disclosure starts, and I would actually, once you've got that date, I would then file an application to postpone and ask for the next one to be done. File an application to postpone for the disclosures and ask for it to be after the second preliminary hearing. You'll probably find that they do this automatically, but just in case, you would be able to file for an application to postpone. Right. Okay, cool. Halls, I would definitely, I'll find my invoice. Definitely next step, phone HMRC and find out if they have been paying your payroll taxes. OTF, hi there. How do I go about negotiating a redundancy settlement? Lots to this one, so I will try and keep it a little bit high level. So redundancy, it depends on how many people are being made redundant is the first thing. If it's just you or a couple people, that's different from if it's over 20 people. So let's just assume it's just you. Then you need to know what your statutory redundancy is. They've probably told you that. And then beyond that, if you think the redundancy was unlawful, that gives you potentially different negotiating powers. Redundancy is one of the 5 fair reasons why you can dismiss someone after 2 years of employment, but they don't just have to have a fair reason to fairly dismiss you. They also have to follow a fair process. Now, if it wasn't a fair process, the process isn't defined very strictly under 20 employees being made redundant. The process is much more clearly defined for over 20 people. But even under 20 people, if you're being made redundant and they're not offering you alternative employment that could be available, if they're not working with you and trying to help you, or if you feel like this was just a done decision, then it may potentially be an unfair process, even if it was the fair reason. So that's one thing. You want to know if you have any legal leverage. And then finally, when you're thinking about negotiating a redundancy package, think about how long it's going to take you to find the equivalent job in terms of benefits, salary, all that kind of stuff. And that's typically where I suggest people start from with a redundancy package. Is it's going to take me 6 months, to get back to this level. So, that's really where I'd like to kind of start working from. Hopefully that's helpful. And Megan says, if an employer unfairly dismisses you and you settle, can they give you a bad reference? So that is actually a great question. So typically in a settlement negotiation, for future reference or for other people, typically in a settlement negotiation, try to include a good reference as part of the terms. And it almost certainly should be in there. So I would double check, Megan, if the terms of your settlement include them not disparaging you or something along those lines. See what they've said about what they will do as part of that. And if you are negotiating settlements, everyone in the future, make sure that you're asking for a good reference as part of your settlement package. Okay, halls, do I have to start saving to pay back dated NI and tax, or is that their responsibility? I suspect that you should start saving. Unfortunately, if you were an employee but they haven't been paying your tax, they're going to be on the hook for the majority of it. Their employer contributions, but you still will have employee contributions that you would have to backdate. So I would assume that you might have to go back and make those employee contributions. But I'm not sure for certain. That's why I definitely phone HMRC. Nicole's got a great question. Are cost orders likely if a deposit order was given at PH? What if I can't pay? I definitely think that the risk goes up, Nicole. And I'm assuming that, so a deposit order, the way that this works is a deposit order for everyone is if one side wants the other side to keep going because they don't think they have a strong case, that they have to pony up to £1,000 to keep going. And the test for that is that they have that they're less, I think it's called less likely to win, or I can't remember the exact terms, but it's like less likely. A costs warning or a costs thing says that you knew, that's what it is. So the tribunal will only award costs if you knew that you had no reasonable prospect of success, but you did it anyway. A deposit order is asking you to pay up because you have a less likely reasonable chance of success, not no reasonable chance of success. So it's like there's different tests here. So that's why I say the risk is higher. But if they thought that you had no reasonable prospect of success, they might have just thrown the case out. Or they might say, look, it's 50-50, or it's not quite a slam dunk, so we're going to go ahead and do a deposit order. But in order for them to make you pay costs, they would have to know or have to believe that you thought that there was no reasonable prospect of success. I don't know if I perfectly explained that, but let me know if that helps. Actually, I've got the same question from Orla and Ted between YouTube and TikTok, and that is, can you still go to tribunal if you're still employed? For example, Orla's on sick leave and Ted is saying, I'm still there, but it's taking a toll on my mental health. Will it reflect badly for my case if I am still working there? So for both of you, It depends on the claim. Where this becomes very important is if you're trying to claim constructive dismissal. So constructive dismissal only applies for people who have worked at the company for over 2 years. And it is kind of like a breach of contract, really. It's that they have broken the implied terms of trust and confidence. So the stuff that isn't written down, but is kind of obvious, like, your job is your job. We're going to give you work to do. We're not going to like put you in a closet and not give you any work. We're not going to bully you relentlessly and try and get you to leave, all that kind of stuff. If you're claiming constructive dismissal, if you resign, but then or if you stay and you don't resign, or if you resign, but then you keep working out your notice or something like that, that would go against you for a constructive dismissal claim. For other claims, it is much less of an issue. It's not to say that the employer wouldn't try and use it, but I mean, tribunals understand that people have to pay their bills. So if you're trying to claim constructive dismissal, the resignation is very important. Saying that it's because you believe that you're being constructively dismissed is very important. Explaining what the last straw was is very important. But for other types of claims, it's less important. I hope that answers both of your questions. I'll stick with YouTube for a minute. Hey, Danae, ironically, unions seem reluctant to represent employees at tribunal. The GMB doesn't collate figures. It really does not help to address the imbalance of power relations. 18 months since my dismissal and only 1 PH is so slow. Yeah, it's so slow, Casey. I actually spoke to someone from the Trade Union Congress yesterday. I was at an event for worker tech. And so I think every union has a different level of capacity to actually support people legally. And what really struck me when I was speaking to a bunch of union people yesterday is unions have their most power when they can prevent something from getting to tribunal in the first place through collective bargaining and collective action. You're very welcome, Ted. So they want to try and prevent things from getting that far by improving the working conditions for workers, overall. Whether that's, with some of the stuff that's going on at McDonald's, making sure that, there's safeguards in place for young people, or whether it's, in the NHS where they're helping people get paid more or helping them take more breaks or things like that. That is really what the unions are mostly focused on. Yes, they can also support you as individuals, but I would say that that is that's not the primary focus of every union, if that makes sense. So that's philosophically worth knowing about. And then secondarily, every union will have its own constraints about who they can support and how many people that they can support. So yeah, it's really, that's why we work with unions, because we want more unions to be able to use our software and therefore help more people. And that's why we support a lot of people who are still in a union, because either their union didn't think that their case was strong enough and so couldn't support them, or just didn't have the capacity to support them. Okay, next question. Can Vala help with the ET1 reviewed before the submission? My deadline is to submit on the 29th. Yes, and the 29th is, what is that, a Tuesday? I'm just checking. 29th is, sorry, I'm just looking at my diary. 29th is next Wednesday. Yeah, we should have time to do that, Andrea. You would need to do the ET1 and get it over to us stat. If you purchased it today, work through the claim builder and work through the document today and then sent it over. That should be fine. But actually, just to double check, Andrea, if you drop us an email at hello@vala.uk after you purchase it and just say, I need this turned around really, really quickly. Here's my deadline. We'll let you know if there's going to be any problem, and we can always refund you if we can't support you within the time. So yeah, always for everyone, if you're worried about timescales, always just email us and we will tell you exactly what our capacity is like at that given moment. And you can do it after you've purchased it. That way, you're front of the queue if we have it. And then we will just refund people that we can't support. And that way, you can take your money elsewhere if you have to, but we will do our best to support you. Okay, let's see what else is going on. OTF says, I've got a colleague who was on annual leave overseas, being made redundant, dealing with a death in the family. Could that be considered in any way while being made redundant? There's maybe something around bereavement leave. Can Bella help with redundancy negotiations? We can't negotiate on your behalf, but our merits assessment service could absolutely help you with understanding if there is if any part of your redundancy was unlawful and how much you might want to ask for as a part of it. If you go to the link tree, you'll see merits assessment, or if you just go to our homepage and scroll down, you will see merits assessment in one of the little boxes. And that's where one of our coaches will take a look at your specific situation and give you you'll have a 1-hour call with the person. We'll tell you what we think about it, and then you'll get a follow-up report as well. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Xavi, let me oh goodness, Ginger, let's go to you first. Can you be made redundant with the only person with no consultation and no alternative job offer being offered to me, despite 4 people now doing the one role that I had? I'm taking them to tribunal. They still haven't sent me their evidence, only the index, and they're a month late sending the bundle. They claim the bundle must have been lost in the post. Like, Jesus. Is this a breach of GDPR? I don't know about the GDPR. The waiting time for the merits assessment, I don't think it's very long right now. Yeah, I don't think it's very long right now, so you should be okay. But always feel free to email us if you want to double check. The company paid me half my wage in the payout and are now claiming I was part employed and part self-employed, which I wasn't, and using this to get out of paying me. My God. Hold on, I'm just trying to get, they have sent through invoices through saying they are from me for the self-employed part they have made up. I have proved they created them by the metadata. God almighty, these people are crazy, aren't they, Ginger? So Ginger, when you say they paid me half in the payout, does that mean that you won your tribunal claim and that they have paid half of what they were told to pay you, or that they paid you half in some other way? Make sure I understand that. Whilst you're answering that, that was my redundancy pay. And now they're saying that you were employed. Oh my God, that's absolutely ridiculous. Ginger, where are you in your tribunal case? Have you had your preliminary hearing yet? Oh no, they're not doing disclosure, are they? No, they've only sent the index. So you must be post-preliminary hearing and in the disclosure process. Is that right? And whilst you're answering, I'm just going to cover a few other quick things. I don't understand Chris's question, UK law. Yes, this is UK law we're talking about. Any tips for victimization negotiations? Thanks, Ginger. I'll come right back to you. So victimization negotiations, those are 2 words. Do you mean, Megan, that you have raised a claim in tribunal for victimization and you're now negotiating settlements, or that you have raised a grievance about victimization and you are negotiating a settlement to leave the company, or what's the negotiation part, Megan? Okay, so Ginger's had her PH. Full case is the 31st of January and the 1st of February. Okay, so Ginger, I think this might be worth a request for specific disclosure. This is one of the things that you can do in the tribunal, where you can basically say, look, they're taking the piss, they're not giving us the information, and we would actually, it might even be an unless order, which is kind of like an or else, where you ask the tribunal to force the employer to do something, or else they'll throw out the case if the employer doesn't do it. So those, and then a request for specific disclosure is to say specifically, I want these things which has not been provided. It does sound like an unless order could be quite useful for you, because it sounds like they're seriously taking the piss. So those are the 2 things off the top of my head. But what I would really recommend for you is our tribunal coaching package. So we sell them in chunks of 3 hours. So 3, 6, and 9 hours. The hourly rate gets cheaper as you go. I think it starts at £75 an hour and then gets cheaper. I think it goes to £60 an hour for the 9-hour package. Given that you've got a lot of prep to do and you're dealing with some shenanigans on the employer's side, having the time with the coach to just talk through this stuff and figure out how to manage them, how to manage the communications to the judge, what application should I be filing, all that kind of stuff. I think that would be a very good option for you if you can afford it. It's on the website under coaching. So if you go to valid.uk and then click the little 3 lines, you'll see coaching there, and that it's the tribunal coaching, the 3, 6, or 9-hour package. But I would look and I would ask them about unless orders, because it sounds like that might be a good option for you. Okay, so Megan's clarified about victimization. I have raised a grievance. Oh my God, like, why do people do this? So I have raised a grievance about victimization, subsequently fired during my probation meeting for it, now wanting to negotiate a settlement without prejudice documents are being drawn up. I could take them to tribunal, but because of my conditions, the stress is too much. Totally understandable. You're very welcome, Ginger. So, absolutely. So there's a few things here. So when you say victimization, Megan, I just want to double check that we're talking about the same thing, because victimization in employment law is a very specific thing, but in the common parlance, it means something different. In the common parlance, often when we say we're being victimized is because, we're being bullied or harassed or treated terribly. Victimization in employment law is if you have made a complaint or supported someone else with a complaint about discrimination at work, naming the protected characteristic that it was about, and then you were punished because of that complaint that you either raised or you supported. It's not to say that what happened to you isn't illegal, but I just want to double check, is that the definition of victimization that you're working to? The detriment because of a complaint or a protected act, as it's called. Can I just start with that to make sure that we're on the same page, Megan? Okay, so whilst Megan is replying, if an employer refuses or only partially proves a reply to a DSAR, you can order compliance from a magistrate or high court. Could be an option if they're simply withholding evidence. Oh, good to know, Casey. I did not know that. I did not know that. And help before a judge. I thought that the ICO was the only enforcement options that you had within DSARs. I didn't know that you could do it within a magistrate. Is that something that you've got experience with? Oh, that's really good. That's really good to know. Okay, so Megan's clarified. Enforcement from other courts. Fantastic. They were forcing me not to work my flexible hours. I reported it to the CEO and cited my illnesses, hoping they would allow reasonable adjustments, but got fired instead. Okay, and now you're raising a grievance because you got fired. Is that right? Hi. Oh, thank you so much. That's very kind of you. First of all, Megan, I'm so sorry. That sounds awful. Okay, great. So that so for everyone else's benefit, that does sound like victimization, because just for everyone's education, it sounds like what Megan did here was Megan said, I believe that I am being treated unfairly because I have a disability and I am not able to work my flexible hours. And I think that's me being treated unfairly because of my disability. So that's called a protected act. Raising a complaint or supporting someone else to raise a complaint about discrimination whilst mentioning the specific protected characteristic, disability in this case. And then it sounds like Megan suffered a detriment because of that protected act. And that was, in this case, getting sacked. So those are the two components to victimization in employment law. Okay, so sorry, I always want people to understand that because it's very powerful and often misunderstood. So in that case, Megan, when you're negotiating a settlement surrounding victimization, what you're really talking about is there's two different illegal things that they potentially have done, right? There's the failure to make reasonable adjustments in the first place, and then the victimization afterwards. If you had taken this to tribunal, what you would be looking at is potentially two claims that could win. Your financial compensation wouldn't double. It would be the same like you would just get one financial compensation, but your injury to feelings could actually be, depending on the impact this had on you as a person, could be even bigger because they victimized you on top of the original discrimination. Because that could be part of like an ongoing campaign of discrimination or multiple incidents of discrimination. So when you're negotiating, there's two things I would suggest to you, Megan. Well, three. One is, if you want us to help you figure out how much it might be worth, that's what our merits assessment service is for. We'll sit down, we'll help you understand what your specific claims are, how strong they might be. Sounds like you've got a good idea of what they are, how strong they might be, and then how much you might be able to ask for. And that's a ballpark figure, but it's a good start. The other thing that I would suggest that you do is go and watch our injury to feelings webinar. I think it's about £16, and that will help you price your particular injury to feelings aspect of your claim, which is probably the biggest chunk of a settlement. And then we also have a free webinar about how to settle, which helps you understand a little bit more about past losses and future losses, or you could just discuss that with a coach on the merits assessment call if you decide to do the merits assessment. I hope does that answer your question, Megan? I caught the director's partner stealing money from the company. I reported it to the second director and she caught him by using a camera. That's when it all went all downhill. I have PTSD and they knew. Ginger, that sounds like a whistleblowing issue on top of everything else. On top of everything else that's going on, that sounds like that is a potential whistleblowing issue. That's great, Megan. I'm so glad it was helpful. Ginger, I will give you the same advice that I just gave Megan. Please go and have a look at our merits assessment service, because it sounds like there's multiple issues going on, and it would be great if you could speak to one of our coaches about this to figure out exactly what claims you might have, what your next options could be. And we'll tell you if we don't think you have a particularly strong claim as well. Like we're not over here just, kind of like blowing smoke up people's arses, basically. We'll tell you if we don't think you do have a claim, and why. And if we do think that you have a claim and that it's strong or not strong, we will give you the reasons why as well. And that's why that call is such an important part of that service, so that you can ask questions and so that we can help you understand. There's so many times when the question isn't, is this moral? The question is this legal? And a lot of what we try and do on that merits assessment service is help you understand the difference between moral and legal. And when it is legal, the specific exact tests that you have to pass, because that's the name of the game. Like, someone can treat you like treat you like dirt, but in order to get the compensation or the redress that you're looking for, you have to take, they treated me like dirt, and turn that into, I was victimized, my protected act was this, my detriment was this. Like, if that makes sense. And that's what we try to help you do with that merits assessment service, so that you can then go and hopefully get the compensation, win a tribunal claim, get a settlement, whatever it is that you're looking for. Okay. Let's see. Oh my goodness, Ginger, honestly, you have been so poorly treated. Casey says a lot of these employment cases boil down to retaliation when one speaks up. And when one speaks up, what a shame. Absolutely. I mean, victimization and whistleblowing are both two rights that you have against that. It's also worth knowing about your protected rights. There's a lot of rights that if you use the right or choose to use the right, your boss can't detriment you as a result of that. I write about that a lot in, I just wrote this massive guide to workplace bullying. The link is on my profile in the link tree. And that talks about all the different protected rights that you have that your employer cannot punish you for using. And that includes things like, requesting flexible work, being a part-time worker, all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah. Right. Allison says, I've been notified months after submitting my case that it has been passed on to a judge. Would you recommend sending a without prejudice letter to settle? Allison, you absolutely can. When you say it's been passed on to a judge, does that mean that you haven't had your preliminary hearing yet? Yeah, let's find out about that. Sorry, I've got a sneeze. Okay. Andrea says, is the injury to feelings and whistleblowing to be mentioned in the ET1 besides the unfair dismissal? So, Andrea, great question. Whistleblowing is a claim, yes, and unfair dismissal is a claim. Injury to feelings is a type of compensation. So you don't necessarily have to mention it as part of the claims, but there is a section in the ET1 that says, what kind of compensation would you like? And it's worth mentioning injury to feelings there. But it's very important that you get the exact claims down. So whistleblowing, unfair dismissal, and that's what our ET1 template. Some people, they kind of freak out when we send them the ET1, when they purchase the ET1, because they're expecting like a Google Doc or like a template that you fill in the words. But the first thing that we give you is actually a wizard that helps you understand your specific claims. And we give you this big set of lists to choose from, and you can add multiple ones and then attach what happened to you in your timeline to those claims. And the reason we're doing that is because the tribunal doesn't want just a list of everything that happened to you. They want you to translate it into those very specific legal claims. And so that's why we try and force you, unfortunately, to do that. And we try and guide you through it and help you. And then you get to like fill in the blanks, and then we generate the document for you. Hopefully that's useful. Okay, Alison, I think the next thing that you're going to get is an invitation to a preliminary hearing. ACAS at that point will probably get back in touch and say, would you like me to go back to the employer and try and negotiate a settlement again? So you could wait for that, or you can certainly go out with a without prejudice letter at this point. Yeah, it's such a crapshoot as to whether or not an employer will negotiate. But usually the general rule is, as the pressure increases, the appetite for negotiating a settlement should also increase because their legal fees are increasing. Okay, so Xavi says, thanks for flagging me to your question again. Hello, is still an ACAS early conciliation, and the employer has come back with a laughable commercial settlement offer and denied everything. I'm ready to proceed to tribunal, but my ACAS conciliator has said that the early conciliation date is the 28th of this month, and to be mindful of the time limits should I wish to lodge a complaint. Could you help me for this? So I think what they're trying to tell you, Xavi, that is a little confusing. So have they given you your ACAS certificate yet? Your ACAS early conciliation certificate? Because the clock, once they give you the certificate, you typically have at least a month after that to actually file your tribunal claim. It almost sounds like they're telling you that you only have until the 28th to file the tribunal claim, but if they haven't given you the certificate, then that's not accurate. So yeah, help me understand that, and then we'll go from there. Applied for sick leave excusal for injuring myself at work. Can and why would my boss refuse this? Karina, that's a good question, and I'm afraid I'm not very good at all on injury at work information. I'm so sorry. So in your case, I would definitely phone ACAS. Not being cheeky, but where are you from? You have a very unusual accent. I'm from Tennessee and Edinburgh. I grew up in Tennessee, and then I moved to Edinburgh to do my master's, and then ended up emigrating here. So I have a half and half American and Scottish accent, which does confuse a lot of people. Okay, so Xavi, I'm confused about that advice, because you cannot file an employment tribunal claim unless you have an ACAS early conciliation certificate, except for very narrow circumstances, like I think it's just if you've been sacked for forming a trade union or a few things like that. There's very few circumstances where you can skip the ACAS early conciliation step and not get that ACAS certificate number. So unless you were sacked for trying to form a trade union, um, I would ask them to clarify, but it sounds like you're going to get your certificate number on the 28th. So maybe they're trying to push you to finalize a negotiation before then, but as soon as you get your certificate number, that's when the clock starts for you to be able to file. And remember, we have a template that we can help you with that for the particulars of claim, which is the most difficult part of the ET1 form. There's some lovely chat going on in the YouTube chat as well. Hello, Queen. Oh, thank you. Hello. Sheila, can you get non-financial awards at Tribunal? It's rare, Sheila. I think theoretically you can be reinstated, especially if you apply. There's a few cases where you can be reinstated into your job. But in terms of things like apologies or asking for training to be instituted or something like that, that's not really within the scope of the tribunal. They're almost exclusively there for financial compensation. In a settlement negotiation, you can negotiate for apologies, a good reference. They might. So Sheila's saying, what about making reasonable adjustments? I've never seen a tribunal judgment that said the employer has to do these reasonable adjustments. That's not to say that it's not possible, but I've never seen it. I think, yeah. So I don't know is a short answer. Sophie says, you're very welcome. I'm sorry I didn't know the answer. Sophie says, my ACAS conciliator gave me my certificate number before 6 weeks. Discussions can still continue, though. Oh, okay. Well, just be mindful of your deadline if you did get that certificate number. I would hate for you to miss it. So typically it's at least a month after they give it to you that you have to file your ET1. Mick said crowdfunding and then deleted it. So I'll let Mick work out what he wants to say next. So I've got just a few more minutes before we finish up. Let's see if there's any questions. Have I missed any questions? Oh, Sophie says, oh, I've already submitted. I have 2 separate respondents that way. Okay, that makes total sense. Okay, so Sheila's saying, then what's the point of claiming a failure to make a reasonable adjustment? It's financial compensation, Sheila. So whether you're still employed with the employer, so let's say you are still employed with the employer, I don't know if the tribunal can order them to make the reasonable adjustment, but if the tribunal says they unlawfully didn't and then they have to compensate for you, they'd be very daft to not then make the reasonable adjustment. But typically the point of employment tribunal is financial compensation. Mind still have not made any even though the claim is in. Yeah. So yeah, like sometimes it's like, what is the point of all of this? And the answer I always give is typically financial compensation. Hi, just to catch up, discovered one respondent left and it from me and Jude. Okay, one of your respondents has left. That's super stressful. You can still use a witness order to force them to come to tribunal if you need to. Do you have any specific video guides or links for people who may want to represent themselves in their case? Thank you. Allison, you have come to the right place. That is exactly what my whole business is built for. You're very welcome, Sheila. I'm so sorry I understand your frustration. Allison, we built software specifically for you. That is what the Vala platform is. It's for self-representers. And the free parts of that software will help you collect your evidence. It will help you understand what your claim might be, lay out your chronology or your timeline of what happened. We have all the templates that you might need, or most of the templates that you might need for representing yourself, like the tribunal claim, particulars of claim, applications to amend, etc. And then we have a lot a lot of free advice using, if you go look at my TikTok videos, or a lot of them are on YouTube as well as the guides on our website. And we have a weekly live, which you're on right now, and a monthly employment tribunal support group. And then we have add-ons like coaching, merits assessments, places where you can actually get a lawyer to specifically look at you and your case and give you some targeted advice at a ridiculously cheaper price than the like a traditional law firm, because we're using tech to try and make things more efficient and faster. So yes, Alison, just keep hanging out here. Sign up for our newsletter. So when you create a free account, make sure to tick the box to sign up for our newsletter, and we will send you lots of helpful material there as well. And yeah, just generally, you have found the place for self-representation. That is all we do, is help people who are representing themselves. Right. JR Blue, help. I had preliminary hearing, but the judge hadn't read my documents. They then tried to coerce me into mediation. I now have to do the case management hearing again. Oh, JR, I am so sorry. Do you have to do the case management hearing with the same judge? Because that doesn't sound very fun. And do you have to do it again because you need to do a, did they ask for a further and better particulars, or did they ask you to clarify anything? Okay, so I have been waiting for an offer of my conciliation advisor, but I've been 5 weeks and I can't get him to ring me back, and I email him as well. That's terrible, Pasco. He's giving me this 5 weeks ago, use the full certificate number when you're asked for it, but he won't get back to me. Pasco, if he gave you your ACAS early certificate number, then if you want to progress, you will need to file your tribunal claim next. And if you can't get a hold of your ACAS conciliator, you might want to phone the main ACAS helpline to try and get some guidance about what's gone on there. But if he gave you your ACAS early certificate, if he gave you your ACAS early conciliation certificate number, then the clock has started for you to file your tribunal claim, and you could be out of time if you don't file it before the expiry. And the expiry is at least a month after they give it to you. And it does vary case by case depending on when you actually started ACAS early conciliation. So I can't give a specific number. Oh, so glad to hear that, Andrea. I'm really happy to help. Okay, so last couple of questions before I go. I lost my 8 days holiday. What can I do? Sharif, when you say you lost them, do you mean your employer is refusing to pay it, or because you didn't lose it, you didn't use it, you lost it? How did you lose it? Yolanda says, I'm suing the respondents individually. Fantastic. That's a good technique. So while Sharif is answering, I'll just talk a little bit about holidays. So some companies, I think we have a use it or lose it holiday policy. It's because we want people to take their holidays every year. But that only applies to the holidays above your statutory holidays. Even if even our policy, which says take your holidays every year, don't carry them over, because we want you to take rests through the year, which is the nice way of using a use it or lose it holiday, because we actually allow people to take their holidays. Even that, we can't say, well, you've lost it and we're not going to compensate you for it if you took no holidays. We would have to at least pay you for the holidays that you didn't take, up to your statutory holiday amounts. And even then, with your contractual holidays, I guess they could say they wouldn't pay you for it, but it would depend on the contract. So Sharif, if they are not paying you for statutory holidays that you were unable to take, that is probably unlawful. And the claim type specifically would be called an unlawful deduction, or unpaid wages, actually, just unpaid wages. Hi, Janae, nice to see you. You're just catching me at the end. I'm just about to head. So Sharif, that would if they're not paying you for your statutory holidays that you were unable to take, then that would be unpaid wages in a potential unpaid wages claim. Yes, I do remember that, Junaid. Yeah. Um, yeah, JR Blue, I think that's exactly what happened. They scheduled another one because they scheduled another one because they didn't read your documents. They just weren't prepared. That's awful. I'm so sorry. Oh my God, Junaid had to actually go into the tribunal and get it. Did you just doorstop them until you finally got the document? Is that what happened? That's iconic. Isn't it only unpaid wages for holiday if you can't carry over due to sick or maternity leave? That's ridiculous. Well done for getting it. Huge well done. I'm not aware of that, Kaylee. So the thing is, like your statutory holidays, you have to be compensated for them. Full stop. Um, they can't pay you not to take all of your holidays. That's also unlawful. But yeah, if they also can't not pay you or not let you take the holiday. Like it's one or the other. Okay, so Junaid says they apologized and said they were really understaffed and that's why they haven't emailed yet. It sounds terrible. My work wouldn't let you carry over pay if you didn't take them. Kaylee, I think the difference here is I'm talking about statutory holidays. So they would, if they might not let you carry them over, but they would still have to pay you for them if they're statutory holidays. If they're contractual holidays, which is on top of your statutory allowance, then I think they have more leeway to do things like that, like a use it or lose it policy. Huge props to your positivity. Sometimes it's all you need to keep going. Thank you for believing us. You know what, influencer? I'm so pleased to hear you say that because that's actually one of our policies at Vala. It's one of the things that I started the company with and have always maintained is that we have a policy of we believe you. You know, I've been through situations like this before on the other side of it, and the amount of people, even well-intended people, who will make you think that maybe you just took it too far. Maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you're, maybe you're just making a big fuss over nothing. Maybe it didn't really go out that way. Did they really say that? Like all of that. No, as a policy, we just believe you. And because I mean, you're like it's just so frustrating. Like you deserve to be believed, and we want to create a place where at least one place where nobody's making you justify yourself. We're just digging in with you and helping you figure out what to do about it. But yeah, it's so important to me that people have at least one place where they are just believed and they don't have to justify anything and they can just rest a little bit and try and solve their problem rather than constantly having to explain themselves and second guess themselves. And yeah, it's not fair. It's absolutely not fair. So thank you for recognizing that, influencer. I'm so pleased that came across. And yeah, thank you. That's wonderful. Okay, I so have to go. I'm so sorry. Did I go live an hour early? I think I might have gone live an hour early. Is that what I did? I think I was supposed to go live at 4 p.m. and then instead, that's exactly what I did. I went live an hour early. Oh, okay, hold on. I might have to stay on because I think we might have emailed everyone and told them to come. Let me just ask Linda. Let me just ask. This is what happens when you have ADHD, everybody. This is what happens right here. Let's just find out. I went live an hour early. Did you send out the email about the live at 4 p.m.? If so, I'll stay on. Why am I like this? Yeah, so typically I go live on 4 p.m. on Wednesdays. And today, my little brain Well, my little brain said, Danae, it's time to go live. And so I logged in at 3 p.m. to do my 1 hour TikTok live and answer everybody's questions. Oh, it's okay. It looks like we did not send an email out to everyone to tell them to join us at 4 p.m. So it's okay. I don't actually have to say, I don't have to do a 2 hour live if I don't want to. Sorry for being so, well, I won't apologize because you all know what it's like to have a disability and be misunderstood for it. So I don't have to apologize for that. ADHD is a protected characteristic, Bear, because it is the protected characteristic of a disability. Hold on just a second, YouTubers. Okay, great. I think it wasn't loading. So yes, I do. I have a disability of ADHD. It is it's so funny. Linda's just saying, "Did you mean to go live an hour early?" I did not. So yeah, I will stay on for just a second and answer a few more questions because this is normally when people would expect me to go live. I think this is what we had scheduled it in for. I'm so sorry for for my usual silliness. Oh, did I accidentally delete something? Let me just see, Mr. Blue. Yes, Ginger Blue, I had an alarm set as I really wanted to listen. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry, everyone. I'm so sorry. So, Junior Blue, I'm so glad that you actually came early, so we got to talk. Pasco is asking, is PTSD a disability? Often, yes, it absolutely is. So this is a good question. We'll talk about my disability for a second and what a disability actually is under the Equality Act, because I think a lot of people hear disability and they just think, a limb difference or a wheelchair user or something that is visible from afar. They walk with a cane, something like that. And disabilities in the Equality Act can be mental health, physical health. They can be sciatica, they can be cancer, all kinds of things. And the definition is actually pretty broad. It is something that significantly impacts your day-to-day life that has been happening or will happen for more than 12 months. And so that would be an injury that, means that you can't sit for long periods at a time. That's a disability. That could be IBS. If it's causing an impact on your day-to-day life, it means that it's hard for you to go out into public without, clear access to restrooms. That could be a disability. It could be anxiety or depression. It could be ADHD. It could be dyslexia. And it can be any number of other physical ailments, like arthritis can be a disability. And then your more classic disabilities, like people who use wheelchairs or people with limb differences and things like that. So, and every single one of those things is protected at work, as long as it fits that criteria of over 12 months of an impact and a significant impact on your day-to-day life. So as an example, my ADHD, you just saw one of the significant impacts of it on my day-to-day life, which is that I have a terrible working memory and I get really confused about times. And so Yolanda says, here's hoping you log on an hour early for the next 12 months. So yeah, this is such a good example to kind of just talk through what does it actually mean for it to have a significant impact on my day-to-day life. Well, in my case, I've had to hire a cleaner because I find it very hard to just keep a space clean. And so that's an extra expense that I've had to take on because left to my own devices, I wouldn't be able to kind of just keep my house clean. I have to work with other people to make sure that I don't miss important deadlines or appointments or things like that. You know, one of the expenses of our business is that I have often work with some kind of assistant or admin support person who literally is telling me, like, you're supposed to go do something or things like that. I have a terrible time focusing, which Bear is mentioning as well. So, one day I can be the most productive human on the planet, and then the next day or the next week, I might not be able to create any focus at all on anything. I'm very easily exhausted because I often have to use a lot of energy just to get through everyday life. And so I find it hard to consistently have any energy. So those are all things that are a significant impact on my day-to-day life. And if you think about that in the work context, you can imagine, if I was an employee at, say, one of the tech companies I used to work at, some of the accommodations that I might request might be, the ability to come in slightly later, the ability to wear noise canceling headphones or move to quiet spaces, um, the ability to take regular breaks or go out for a walk to reset my focus, the ability to stop working if I can't focus and go do something else for a while, or to shift projects so that I can move between things rather than having to force myself. I can't force myself to focus on something. Like it literally can't happen. And so those are the kinds of things that an employer should be working with me to try and accommodate. And as long as it's reasonable, as long as they can accommodate it, they need to. And so if they can get me headphones, they should. That is an accommodation. How do we get diagnosed? So I went private. You remember I did a video a long time ago about the big brouhaha because the waiting lists are so enormous for people waiting for an ADHD diagnosis on the NHS. There's just not enough specialists. It's a oh, good TikTok watch. Let us know how you get on. What did they say? So there's not enough specialists, and so there's a massive waiting list, and it's a condition that was widely misunderstood, especially in women. Often when we think of ADHD, we think of the little boys running around with sticks, right? Kind of like, screaming and hitting things. And that's the hyperactive type. And often it was only really thought to have been in boys. But there's also an inattentive type, kind of head in the clouds, can't focus, daydreaming all the time. And that, and even the hyperactive type was often missed in girls in particular. I'm a combined type. Look, I'm both hyperactive and inattentive. So that can really cause problems. But on the other hand, it means I'm incredibly creative. It means that I have a ton of energy for new ideas. If my focus does hit on something that I like, I am unstoppable. So, it swings and roundabouts. Sometimes it genuinely feels like a really crappy disability. And sometimes it feels like, it gives me a different way of looking at the world. Either way, if I was the employee of another company, I would need to have accommodations put into place, and my employer would be required to put those accommodations into place, or at least try to make those accommodations if they are reasonable. Right, I've got a few more questions coming in. So TikTok says they just finished speaking to ACAS. They said I could get a protective award because of my redundancy, and they would send me a link. Excellent. Okay, so TikTok, so I can either go through early conciliation or straight to tribunal. So TikTok is the rare example of someone who can apply for the protective award. So this is great. TikTok, if you want some support with that, feel free to get in touch with us. I think our that would be our merits assessment package if you want some support to put forward your case for a protective award. I would definitely, for the protective award, I would definitely go to gov.uk, the tribunal database of decisions, type in protective award in quotes, and look at the cases where they talk about it, because a lot of protective awards are denied, and it's because people aren't dotting the I's and crossing the T's when it comes to requesting them. And the judges explain in each of those cases what the I's and the T's are. So definitely go to gov.uk's website, Employment Tribunal decisions, and type in protective award in quotes and read those judgments so that you're really prepared. And if you want our support, you can email in or get the merits assessment package for now, and we can give you support with that. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. With disabilities, is this something you would say post-offer or before the offer? It's really up to you, and it's such a tricky thing when you're disclosing a disability. You're very welcome, TikTok. The moment your employer knows that you have a disability or even suspects that you have a disability, that's when the protection comes in for being a disabled person. So in theory, on paper, it makes sense to disclose early. In reality, the reason it's protected is because people get mistreated because they have disabilities. And so then, you're upping the chances of mistreatment by disclosing it. Theoretically, you're more legally covered because you have disclosed it. But then, of course, you have to go through the trouble of enforcing it. So it really depends on the circumstances. It really, really does. It is possible for discrimination to happen during the interview process as well. And so if you disclose a disability, or if you believe that they think you have a disability during the interview process, that, mistreatment can happen at that point as well. But it is ultimately, it's a very personal decision. Sorry, I can't give you more specific guidelines on that. I got beaten up by 2 managers in January. I've been suspended for 6 months, put a doctor note in for 1 week, and they sacked me. They did not finish my investigation. This is on YouTube. God, Pasco, that sounds absolutely terrible. I am so sorry. TikTok says, I'm nerdy, but I cannot wait to read the judgments on gov.uk. Yeah, they are very interesting. So they told me that they are not paying me out because I did not work for 2 years, but then I told them I am disabled, so he is coming back. Okay. So Pasco, when you said you got beaten up, do you mean that you were physically assaulted by 2 people in your workplace? Is that what happened to you? My goodness. Allison is also asking about disclosing a disability for reasonable adjustments. Allison, hopefully the answer that I just gave to TikTok makes sense. And so she's then saying, technically, if I've ticked I have a disability, applying to a job, if I get an offer and later request a flexibility, they would need to adjust. They would need to make a reasonable adjustment, Allison. So, it's not like you can't. Employers get this a little kind of, employers get some leeway, but if they can accommodate a request, they should, basically, if it's reasonable. Whether or not you tick the box before or after is up to you. Whether you tick the box before or whether you just disclose it after, absolutely up to you. Either way, it doesn't matter when you disclose it. Your employer, as soon as they find out or as soon as they suspect, they need to start understanding accommodations. Okay, so Pasco has clarified that yes, Pasco was physically assaulted by 2 managers at their workplace. And then he's disabled. They said that he don't have rights. My advisor has not come back to me. Who is the advisor with Pasco? Is that with a citizen's advice or something like that, or a union? Let's see. Tina on YouTube says, some of my disclosure documents are to be decided in preliminary hearing in 24 if they are not out of scope. So should I disclose these documents during disclosure or not until the decision is made on them in the PH? I would wait for the PH. So if they're deciding as to whether or not they need to be disclosed, I would wait for the PH. So ACAS advisor hasn't come back to you. Pasco, if you want a second opinion, that's what our merits assessment service is for. It costs £149. So if that's something that's within your price range, we can give you an opinion as to what your options are. Otherwise, feel free to just keep trying ACAS, and I would look at citizens' advice in your area as well. Let's see. I've got questions here. Okay, I think I've answered. Have I missed anybody's questions? And you've told, okay, so Pascal, you have phoned ACAS and they just said to wait for a reply. The thing is, Pasco, if you go to the link in my profile and it says free ebook, go and download that free ebook because that will tell you about the timescales, and those are so important whilst you're waiting. So don't wait past your deadlines. Ginger, I've missed your question. Aha, I knew I'd missed one. Hi, Danae. If I apply for the unless order and the judge grants it, does the case still go ahead? Yes. So the unless order is like an or else. So let's say you apply for an unless order, unless they give you the documents in the bundle, then they don't post it to the wrong. Why are they even posting it? It should be a PDF, but okay. So unless they do that stuff, then they're going to strike out. So they post them, so let's say they grant that and they say, okay, you have this amount of time, and unless you do it within this amount of time, you're going to get struck out. Then your employer has that time to do it, and then if it doesn't happen, then you can apply for the strikeout and say, well, they missed their deadline. Can you please strike it out? But that's the term for throwing out the case. It's strikeout. You can also apply for a strikeout, but typically you kind of escalate through unless order and then strikeout. You don't go straight for the jugular, or else it might look like an overreaction, basically. Tina says my disclosure deadline is in 2 days. So Tina, let me make 100% sure. So when you say that they're going to be decided in Feb at a PH, do you mean that it's going to be decided as to whether or not you have to disclose them? Is that what's going to get decided in February? So for mental health disabilities, can a reasonable adjustment be request my role to be kept confidential during the redundancy process as it causes me more stress going back to work? Mama, that's a good question. I'm not actually sure. So typically the reasonable adjustments is for you to be able to perform your role. And so if you're in redundancy, I don't know if that applies, but the reasonable adjustments is so say, for example, you have an anxiety disorder, and you like I have anxiety as well. And one of the things that I absolutely hate is just really loud noises, for example. So in order for me to do my job well, I do not need to be in a noisy environment. So maybe I would request a different location. That is so that I can do my job, if that makes sense. So any reasonable adjustment request, I think I would put that under the context of so that I can do my job. This is a request I would like to make. Oh, sorry, my cat has joined us. Should I not even include those documents in the list of index? I think so, Tina. If they're under dispute as to whether or not you should disclose them, I wouldn't even include them for now until you're told to. Crazy Jay, hey, just to say I passed your details on to my stepdad months back, and you've helped loads, so thank you. Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that. Oh, that's wonderful to hear. I'm so glad that we were able to help. A quick question for everyone. We're still collecting case studies. So if somebody has settled with VALA, are successfully representing themselves in tribunal, even if the case hasn't finished, or has actually won in tribunal and had support from VALA, if you would like to tell your story, either anonymously or on the record, please do let me know, because we're collecting case studies at the moment and we're doing like a big press push. And we want to tell more. Oh, Yolanda, that would be wonderful. So if you message me, I think I follow you, so you can DM me. So if you're open to it, just drop me a DM and we can go from there. And I really appreciate it. Okay, so I am going to go now, even though I came on an hour early. Respondents thinks that those documents are out of scope, so in PH they will decide if they're in scope. So Tina, I would leave those out because it's a known issue that those will be discussed later on. So I think you're totally fine to leave those out. He's awaiting tribunal. I'll let them know. My employer didn't want me to talk about redundancy online. Can I talk about it? Mama Bean, I actually don't know. My instinct is to say, even if you legally can, it might be more trouble than it's worth, but I don't know. I'm so sorry. Okay, I do need to go now though. Thank you all so much. Thank you for bearing with me, just rocking up an hour early to the call and then leaving a little bit early or leaving earlier than I should. Um, and we had a lovely conversation about ADHD. That was great. So if you have any other questions I've missed or if any occur to you later on, we are always here by email. It's hello@vala.uk. That's better than DMing me in general because we have a whole team that looks after that inbox rather than just me. So just me and Meg who look after the TikTok DMs. So yeah, any further questions, please just drop us an email. We talked a lot about the merits assessment service tonight, which is where you're not sure, should I take this forward? What are my rights? What could I potentially win? Do I have a case? That's what that service on our website is for. We talked a lot about preliminary hearings. We can support you with those. And remember the webinars page of our website, because there are both free and paid webinars, but all the paid ones are below £20. And there's a lot of very specific information in those webinars that can guide you through particular points in your issues. And don't forget the actual platform, which is free to use to just manage your case, right? Collect your evidence, keep track of everything, build out that timeline of what happened, which will be so helpful for your witness statement. All of that is free and is just at vala.uk. Okay, have a wonderful day, everybody. I will see you soon. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Bye-bye. Thank you so much, YouTubers. Bye-bye.